Hello learners, welcome to our session today, a continuation of the concept that we had introduced earlier on, accounting for overheads. Recalling accounting for overheads, we mentioned that I would be talking of four main steps. If you can recall the steps, these are the steps that we mentioned that we'll be looking at. Of course, step number one, we say that it will be upon us to accumulate our overheads. So step number one, recall, we talked of accumulation of overheads. Accumulation of overheads. This is our step number one. Step number two, my good students, we talked of allocation and apportionment of overheads. Allocation and apportionment. Allocation and apportionment of OHDs. This is the most important step in this concept as well. Talk of number three, we will be talking of reapportionment now. Talk of reapportionment. Talk of reapportionment of service department overheads to production department. So I'd explain this concept, but we are going to look at it again. Talk of step number four, it will be upon us to absorb our overheads. So talk of overheads absorption. Overheads absorption. So these are the four steps that we must always tend to recall anytime we are looking at aspect of accounting for overheads. So step number one, it was all about us collecting all these overheads. Step number two, it was about us allocating these overheads to each department. Allocating and apportioning these overheads to each department. Step number three, where our focus will be, you'll find that in our production, I'll be having other departments that supports our production, right? So they'll just act as a support, but they will not be kind of accounted for as at the end of the day when we'll be determining our cost per unit. So these support departments, which we're terming them as service departments, we will be required to eliminate them. Because recall from the word go, we say that the whole idea of us studying the concept of the aspect of overheads is, or rather cost accumulation, because all of these items are under cost accumulation. The whole idea of us studying cost accumulation basically is to determine the cost per unit. And for us to determine the cost per unit, if you can recall very clearly what we said, for us to determine our cost per unit, we must always tend to have the following. We must always tend to have, number one, material cost, which you had analyzed the concept of material cost. So we'll always be talking of material cost. Number two, we will be talking of labor cost. And finally, production OHDs. And finally, our production overheads. So collecting all these costs together, this is what will give us our cost per unit. This is what will give us our cost per unit. So in our production, you'll find that we will be having some aspect, or rather some departments, which will support this production. They are not directly relating to production, but they do support production. So these departments are what you are terming them as service departments overheads. As at the end of the day, while we are accounting for these overheads, because our main aim is to absorb these overheads to our units, you will find that I'm going to eliminate, or rather we will be required to eliminate these service departments. We will be required to eliminate these service departments. And these costs, we should reapportion them to the production. We should reapportion them to production departments. We should reapportion them to production departments. And that's why in our class today, our focus will be on reapportioning these costs that have been incurred in the service departments to our production department. So basically that is what our focus will be today, and that's why we are talking of reapportionment of overheads. Of course, of reapportionment of service overheads to production department. That is where our focus will be today. So understanding that case, we are talking of service departments basically is one which exists to support the production activities, just as we've said. So you'll find that reapportionment of overheads occurs when service departments' costs are charged to user departments. For example, maybe I'm having maintenance department, which is a service cost. It will be charged to user department. In that, at this point, I'll be having a specific production department. So what we need to understand is that we want to reallocate. Yes, initially on step number 2, we had allocated these overheads to all our service and production departments as well. So whatever that you're doing now, we are reapportioning. We are reapportioning our service department cost to production, with the mind that we said we will be required to eliminate our service departments. So that should take us to the methods that we normally tend to use. Methods of reapportioning our overheads, methods of reapportioning our service department overheads. So methods used in reapportionment of overheads. So looking at our methods used, methods used in reapportionment, methods used in reapportionment, methods used in reapportionment of service departments, of service, methods used in reapportionment of service departments, of service departments. So basically, we normally tend to talk of 4 main methods, and these are the following. Number 1, we normally tend to talk of a method known as a direct allocation method. So number 1, we normally tend to talk of direct allocation method. We'll be explaining all of them. Number 2, we normally tend to talk of step and close down method, or at times you can refer to it as a step and close-wise method. So step and close down method. Also, we can refer to this as a sequential method. We can refer to this as a sequential method. Number 3, we normally tend to talk of a method known as a repeated distribution method. Repeated distribution method, also known as a continuous allotment method, commonly known as also known as a continuous allotment method, continuous allotment method. And finally, we normally tend to talk of a method known as algebraic, or rather simultaneous equation, simultaneous equation method, simultaneous equation method. So basically, these are the methods that we normally tend to use in reapportioning our service department. Because right now, we are agreeing that as at the end of the day, I'll have to eliminate our we'll have to eliminate, of course, our service department overheads. And therefore, by doing that, we'll have to do what? We'll have to use either of the method. So you're going to dissect each and every method here, so that at the end of the day, you'll find that it will be very, very easy on our end. It will be very, very easy on our end to work it out. So mentioning that, we jump to step number 1. We'll also be working out these steps using, of course, questions from our past papers, so that this concept should be cemented, very, very, very well. So therefore, in this case, we start by analyzing the first method. We start by analyzing the first method of reapportionment, which we have referred to it as direct allocation method. Direct allocation method. Direct allocation method. So you're starting with number 1. Direct allocation method. Direct allocation method. Looking at direct allocation method, my good students, what we need to understand basically, this is a method of overhead reapportionment where only service costs are reapportioned, or rather service costs are reapportioned to production departments only. So method of overhead reapportionment where the service overheads are apportioned to production departments only. Production departments only. So in this case, you'll find that in this method, services provided by services to each other are ignored. Overheads from service departments will only be apportioned to production department only. To production department only. To production department only. So at this point, you're saying that whatever that we need to do is basically to reapportion our service departments to production departments only. We won't reapportion service to service departments like the other method that we'll be looking at. That is very key to understand. That direct allocation method, our focus basically will be to reapportion our service departments to production departments only. To production departments only. And I've really, really insisted on that. So, for us to understand this concept clearly, I want us to look at this question of ours. This question of ours, it was attested in May 2021. May 2021, question number 3. There's a question which was attested in May 2021, question number 3. I'll want us to look at that question and see what we will be required to do. I want us to look at this question and see what we were required to do. So we are talking of May 2021. Question number 3. And the question, I'm sharing it on our screen here. I've shared the question in our screen. I've shared the question in our screen, believing that it is very, very visible. So basically, at this point, you are told that Biggs Limited reapportions the cost incurred in 2 service cost centers, namely materials handling and inspection, to the 3 production cost centers of machining, finishing, and assembly. So we are told that the following are the overhead costs which have been allocated and apportioned to the 5 cost centers. I'm having machining, finishing, assembly, materials handling, and inspection, having in mind that I'm only talking of 2 service departments, which are basically material handling and inspection. Okay, then we are told that estimates of the benefits received by each cost center are as follows. I'm having materials and inspection. The examiner here wanted us to do what? The examiner here wanted us to calculate the charge for overhead to each of the 3 production cost centers, including amounts reapportioned from the 2 service centers, using number 1, continuous allotment method, which is the same as repeated distribution, as well as algebraic method. So given this question, yes, you are required to use the 2 methods. But the same question I want us to use also to analyze the other methods. The same question I want us to use to analyze the other methods as well. That is, of course, May 2021 question number 3. For those who have your past paper, you can check it out directly. May 2021 question number 3. So I'm going to squeeze this question, believing that it will be visible as we'll be working it out, so that once we are working it out, we should also be able to view the question. Is that okay? So therefore, I'm squeezing this question of ours here. I hope it will still be visible. Okay. So that is what I'll be having there. So whatever that I'm requested to do here is to reapportion our service department overheads to our production department. So looking at our reapportionment schedule, in this case, we are talking of a reapportionment schedule. Talk of a reapportionment schedule. This is what we should be having. I should be talking of, number 1, I should be talking, of course, of our overheads here. I'm having our ratio at this point. Talk of our total. And I'm having our figures there that I was given for each department. Let us talk of each department. Here I'm having aspect to do with, of course, machining. Allow me to use M representing machining department. Talk of finishing. Allow me to use F to represent our finishing department. Assembly, allow me to use A to represent assembly department. Talk of aspect of materials handling, allow me to use MH to represent material handling department. And inspection, allow me to use I to represent our inspection department. So I'm having our allocated overheads, allocated OHDs. Allocated OHDs, remember our figures you're given in millions. Our figures you're given in millions here. So allocated overheads for machining, I'm having 400. We can clearly see that. Finishing, I'm having 200. Assembly, I'm having 100. Material handling, I'm having 100. And lastly, inspection, I'm having 50. Believing that that is what you are given there, and we can clearly see that, right? Once we have that, our task here is to reapportion. So we talk of our reapportionment. So I'm going to have our reapportionment here. Reapportionment, my good students, recall, we are using what? We want to use a direct allocation method. So therefore, let us note the ratios, having in mind that direct allocation method, I'm only going to redistribute these overheads to production departments only. I'm going to redistribute these overheads to production departments only. So mentioning that, this is what you're going to do. I'm going to have our, we start with material handling, which we've said it is MH. So MH, what was the ratio given for MH? Let us go to our note there, where we are told that estimates of the benefits received by each cost center are as follows. Material handling, I'm having 30%, 25%, 35%, and 10%. So these figures, if we can kind of maybe reduce them, in this case, all of this I can see they are divisible by 5. So 30 divided by 5, that should give us, we are looking at our ratios, that should give us 6, right? 25 divided by 5, that should give us 5. 35 divided by 5, that should give us 7, right? So in that case, I'm having our ratios. Because recall, whatever that you want to do, you want to redistribute only to production department. What about for inspection? What were we given for inspection? Which is represented by I. Inspection, I'm having 20, 30, and 45. All of them are divisible by 5. So 20 divided by 5, that should give us 4. 30 divided by 5, that should give us 6. And 45 divided by 5, that should give us what? 9. So we have our ratios there. We have our ratios at that point. So our task that has remained here, my good student, is for us to redistribute, for us to reapportion. We want to reapportion our service department overheads here. We start with material handling, which is 100. So I need to reapportion this 100 to only production departments. That is to say, I won't reapportion it to our inspection. So how will we go about that? How will we go about that? So doing that, we should be having 100 is the one that you want to reapportion. So we are going to take the first one. We will be having 6 plus 5 plus 7 to give us 18. So I'm having 6 of 18 times 100. This should give me 33. That is for machining. Finishing, I'm having 5 of 18 times 100 to give us, that should give us 28. And finally, I'm having 7 of 18 times 100. 7 of 18 times 100. That should give us a figure of 39. 39, right? That is for assembly. So that if we can total the same, 39 plus 28 plus 33, of course, should give us 100. So that is to say, I have what? I have reapportioned our service department, which is material handling here, to all our production department. After we're done with that, we proceed to inspection. Inspection, we had 50. We want to reapportion this 50. Remember, at this point, material handling won't receive anything. So that as at the end of the day, whatever that you should be having here is 4 plus 6 plus 9 to give us 19. So for machining, I should be talking of 4 divided by 19 times 50. This should give us a figure of 11. I'm getting 11 here. 6 of 19 times 50, I'm getting a figure of 16. And finally, 9 of 19 times 50, I'm getting a figure of 24. I'm getting a figure of, that is 24, right? I'm getting a figure of 24. The other one was 15.7, 16. Then the other one was 10.511. So I'm having here 11 plus 16 plus 24. Of course, should give us we should take 10, assuming, because of all the rounding off. So that as at the end of the day, my good students, what we should be having is, for service departments, I should be having nil. We should be having nil, because 100 minus 100 have distributed all of that. 50 minus 50 have distributed all of that. So therefore, come and determine our total of our production departments, which in this case, we should be talking of 400 plus 33, 400 plus 33, plus 10 to give us, of course, 443. 200 plus 28 plus 16, this should give us 244. Whereas 100 plus 39 plus 24, this should give us 163. So in that case, it is to say I am done with reapportioning using our direct allocation method. So that the summation of this should give us the initial summation, which was how much? 400 plus 200 plus 250, which gave us 850. So if I was to add whatever that we reapportion, 443 plus 244 plus 163 should give us the same 850, what we had as at the beginning. So whatever that we've done there is we have reapportioned our service departments using direct allocation method. Very important to note. Once you're done with that, we can proceed to the second step, or rather the second method, which you're referring to it as step and close down method, at times referred to as sequential method, or also you can also term it as what? Aspect of elimination method. All these are the terms that you can use to refer to this method that I want us to handle right now. So therefore, let us jump to the second method. And unless you have a question, of course, you can always engage us. So therefore, let us proceed to the second method here, which we are terming it as number 2. Talk of step and close down method. At times, you can refer to it as elimination method, or you can also refer to this as sequential method. All these are the terms that you can use to refer to our step, or rather our method number 2. So these are very interesting method, and it's also very easy. And Mwalimu is going to give you the reason why he's saying like that. It's very interesting and it's also very easy. Because by now, we have that knowledge that whatever that you're doing now is we are getting rid of our service department overheads. That is what should click at the back of our mind. We are getting rid of our service department overheads. So, using step and close down method, my good students, what we should be able to understand and have it at the back of our mind is, in this method, the service department that provides most services to the other service department is identified. And its overheads will be reapportioned first. Believing that you are able to grasp that very clearly, we are saying that in this method, the service department that provides most services to the other service department is identified, and its overheads will be reapportioned first. Once the apportionment has been done, no further reapportioned will be made to other departments. That is to say, we are going to close it down completely. This is what Mwalimu is saying, that using the step and close down method, first thing that we are going to do, we are going to identify the service department that has the most overheads. This is a service department that you are going to reapportion first to all the departments that I'll be having, including service department. Then you are going to close that department completely. We are going to close it down. Then in that case, we are going to consider the second service department that has the highest overheads. I'm going to use the same procedure whereby I'll be reapportioning all these overheads to all our departments, including service department if it will be there. So that again, after we've done like that, you're going to close it down. So you're going to repeat the same procedure till I'm done with all our service departments. To understand this concept clearly, we can consider a question. Yes, we can. The same question, I believe we had looked at it. Now I'm going to have our case. I just take it the way it is. I'm having our overheads here. I don't want to erase the first one. That's why I'm repeating it again. I'm having our ratio at that point. We're having our total here. I'm having machining. We're having finishing. We're having assembly. I'm having material handling. And we're having inspection here. Okay? Given the fact that as at now, we know very well that our figures are in millions. So I'm having millions. Our figures are in millions. So these are what you should be having. You'll find that MA is very sweet. MA is always very sweet. So long as you're not cramming, so long as you're getting the concept right, you'll find that MA is very sweet. Management accounting is always very sweet. So once we have this, I'm going to talk, of course, of allocated. Allocated, I'm having the total which ready to be 850. I'm having here 400. We're having 200. I'm having 100, I'm having 100, and you're having 50. So we want to talk of reapportionment. We want to talk of reapportionment. We want to talk of reapportionment. Having in mind that you are using what? Step and close down method. First thing that we need to do, my good student, is to identify the service department to the most overheads, which in this case is which service department? Which service department has the highest overheads? I can see it is MH, material handling. This is the service department that had the most or the highest overheads. So this is a department that I'm going to reapportion first. This is a department that you are going to reapportion first. So how will you go about it? I'm going to have my MH here. Our ratios. Our ratios at this point, remember, I'm also going to reapportion to the other service department. And if we can check our question clearly, what was the ratio for material handling? I'm having, of course, 30, 25, 35, and 10%, right? So that is to say, I'm going to have whatever that you had, 6, 5, 7, then 10 divided by 5, that should give us what? 2, right? So therefore, at this point, I'm going to have a ratio to be 6 is to 5 is to 7 is to 2. Being our ratio. 6 is to 5 is to 7 is to 2. Let me have it here in our ratios. 6 is to 5 is to 7 is to 2. Given the fact that also inspection will be receiving some part from our material handling. So therefore, these are what you're going to do. I want to reapportion this service department that has the highest overheads, which you've clearly seen it was what? Material handling. So I'm having 100. That is what you want to reapportion, right? So we should be talking of 6 plus 5 plus 7 plus 2 to give us 20. Then after that case, we have 6 of 20 times 100. So therefore, this one will receive 30. This one will receive 30. 5 of 20 times 100. This one should receive aspect of, this one should receive 25. 7 of 20 times 100. This one should receive 35. And finally, 2 of 20 times 100. This one should receive 10. What you are realizing, or rather what you are going to realize here, is that right now also the other service department is receiving some overheads from our other service department, because both of these two are service departments. Now, once you're done with that, you consider the second service department. So therefore, in this case, we had only two, so I'm going to have inspection. But what you should have in mind is that right now, we closed after reapportioning the overheads of material handling. We closed it down. We closed it down completely. So therefore, this department is not going to receive, any other overheads from either of the departments that we will be having. We are going to close it. We are going to close it. We are going to close it. So therefore, my ratio for inspection, I should be having 4:6:9 as what we had initially, because this time round, I'm not redistributing that to our service department. The big question would be, how much are we going, in terms of overheads, how much are we going to redistribute? I had 50, which was allocated. I have received 10 from material handling. So you can agree and say that the total overheads in inspection will be how much? We are going to talk of 60. We are going to talk of 60. We are going to talk of 60, right? Because it is 50 plus 10. So that is what I want us to redistribute. That is what I want us to reapportion to our production departments, because I have already closed down our material handling. So how are we going to go about it? That will be simple. Because now I'll be having 6, or rather the first one is of course 4 of, so I'm having 4 of 19 times 60. This should give us a figure of 13. 6 of 19 times 60, that should give us a figure of 19. And finally, I'm having 9 of 19 times 60. That should give us a figure of how much? 28. So therefore, if we sum it up, 28 plus 19 plus 13, of course, should give us 60, right? Should give us 60.4, which is just 60. So I'm having 13 plus 19 plus 28. So that should give us 60. So that as at the end of the day, my good students, as at the end of the day, this is what I should be having. Now, our production departments, the overheads that I'll be having in mind that we have eliminated the 2 service departments. So these ones, I have completely eliminated them. So therefore, I should be having 0, 0, right? What will be my overheads in machining? 400 plus 30 plus 13. This should give us 443. 200 plus 25 plus 19. This should give us 244. And finally, 100 plus 35 plus 28. This should give us 163. So that if we sum it up, that should take us back to 850. That should take us back to 850. And basically, that is how you're supposed to use what? Aspect of elimination, step and close down method. And all these questions actually, they'll always be the same. So long as you've grasped the main concept, things will always be very, very easy and they'll always flow. So to this point, guys, I want us to meet in the next session, whereby we're going to look at the other two methods that have remained. This is basically aspect of repeated distribution method and simultaneous equation method. So to this point, thank you so much, and let us meet in our next session. Thank you.